probably seen them around Alabama, historic buildings marked with plaques showing they're listed on the National Register of Historic Places. But does that listing actually protect these buildings from being torn down? It's a question that comes up whenever historic property faces potential demolition. Can a property on the National Register of Historic Places be demolished? Let's verify.
The National Register of Historic Places is the federal government's official list of buildings and sites important to American history. In Alabama, hundreds of properties are on that list, from antebellum homes to civil rights landmarks. But does being on the National Register mean a building can't be torn down? Let's verify. Our sources are the National Park Service's official frequently asked questions, Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act, and Title 36 of the Code of Federal Regulations. First, let's understand what it takes to get on the National Register. According to Title 36 of the Code of Federal Regulations, Part 60, properties eligible for listing are generally at least 50 years old. Properties less than 50 years old must be exceptionally important to be considered eligible for listing. But here's the surprising part. According to the National Park Service, being listed on the National Register does not place limits on what a non-federal property owner can do, including demolishing the building. The only exception is when a project involves federal money, permits, or other federal approval, but it's usually funding or licensing. In cases where there is federal assistance, Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act requires federal agencies to consider how the project could affect historic properties. So, if a private owner uses their own funds and there is no federal involvement, federal law does not prevent them from demolishing a National Registered property. However, some cities and counties have local historic preservation ordinances that offer stronger protections. When a city creates a local historic district or names a building a historic landmark, property owners may have to get permission before making major changes or tearing the building down. In these cases, a local historic preservation board can deny a demolition request if they believe the building should be saved. For example, Birmingham has a local historic district ordinance that regulates demolition, changes, and new construction within designated areas. Property owners in those districts must go through a review process and may face penalties for unauthorized demolition. These local protections are legally binding and enforceable, but not every community has these laws, and they only apply to buildings located in locally designated historic districts or landmarks. So we can verify that a private owner can demolish a property listed on the National Register of Historic Places unless federal funding or permits are involved, or the property is in a local historic district where demolition requires approval.
If you have something you want us to verify, text us at 256-382-2692. As state lawmakers prepare for the upcoming legislative session, you may have noticed headlines about bills being pre-filed. But what does that mean, and why do legislators file bills before the session even begins? We verify.
Pre-filing allows legislators to submit proposed laws weeks or even months before the legislative session officially starts. During this time, you might see dozens of bills filed on everything from education and taxes to hemp regulations. But why go through the trouble? Why do legislators pre-file bills? Let's verify. Our sources are the National Conference of State Legislatures and the Alabama Legislature's official website. According to the National Conference of State Legislatures, pre-filing helps speed up the legislative process. In fact, most state legislatures across the country allow lawmakers to pre-file bills before a regular session even begins. This early submission gives legislative staff time to complete necessary paperwork, number the bills, and organize them for review, essentially providing a head start before lawmakers officially take the floor. Pre-filing also benefits the public, businesses, and advocacy groups. It gives them a chance to see bills early, understand the potential impacts, and provide feedback before the session formally begins. In Alabama, the legislature system works like this. When a bill is pre-filed, it is given a number and informally referred to a standing committee. Then on the first day of a legislative session, the bill is read and formally referred to the same committee where the official process begins. The Alabama legislature also notes that pre-filing bills is only valid for regular legislative sessions. The National Conference of State Legislatures also points out that in some states, committees can even hear and vote on pre-filed bills before the regular session begins. However, in Alabama, committees must wait until the first legislative day to take action. But it's important to remember that pre-filing doesn't guarantee a bill will pass. It simply gets the bill into the system early. The legislative journey is still long. Committee hearings, debates, amendments, and votes in both chambers must all happen before a bill can reach the governor's desk. Many pre-filed bills never make it that far, but the early start can make all the difference for lawmakers.
If you have something you want us to verify, text us at 256-382-2692. This past weekend, U.S. military forces captured Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro and brought him to New York to face drug trafficking charges. The operation has since sparked international debate about U.S. intervention in other countries. But is this the first time the United States has intervened in another nation? We verify.
The Maduro operation has raised questions about America's history abroad, and it sparked protests right here in Alabama. From military deployments to regime changes, U.S. involvement in foreign nations has been a hot topic of heated debate for decades. Some see it as protecting American interests and promoting democracy, while others view it as overreach. But has the United States intervened in other countries before? Let's verify. Our sources are the Office of Historian Congressional Research Services and the research database EBSCO. When we look back at history, we found that U.S. has done this before, involving different countries and different presidents. According to EBSCO, in 1965, U.S. President Lyndon Johnson sent 22,000 American troops to the Dominican Republic. The goal was to stop former President Juan Bosch, who had been overthrown in 1963 in a coup, from returning to power. The U.S. feared it could become a new communist government. In 1983, after Grenada's Prime Minister, Maurice Bishop, was overthrown and killed, President Ronald Reagan ordered the U.S. military to invade the island. He said the invasion was meant to protect American medical students living there and to prevent Grenada from falling under communist influence. And in 1989, President George H.W. Bush ordered a U.S. invasion of Panama. About 24,000 U.S. troops were sent over to remove the country's leader, General Manuel Noriega, who had been charged with drug trafficking. He was captured and taken to the U.S., put on trial, and in 1992, sentenced to 40 years in prison. So we can verify that, yes, the United States has intervened in other countries before with documented operations in the Dominican Republic, Grenada, and Panama, among others.
If you have something you want us to verify, text us at 256-382-2692. Huntsville is growing at an unprecedented rate. In December alone, the city council passed 3 annexation proposals that added about 725 acres to the city. The Rocket City now spans 227 square miles, making it the 27th largest city in the country by land area, comparable in size to Chicago. But if where you live gets annexed, what does that mean for you? We verify.
Annexation is when a city officially expands its boundaries to include nearby neighborhoods or property. Cities pursue annexation to plan for future growth and support long-term financial stability. But what really happens to you if you live in an area that gets annexed? Let's verify. Our sources are the Alabama Code, the United States Postal Service, and Congress.gov. Here's what we found. Here's what changes the moment your address gets annexed. First, you're immediately bound by all the city's laws, ordinances, and tax requirements, and you also get to vote in city elections. But according to Congress.gov, your street address and zip code usually stay the same. That's because mailing addresses are controlled by the U.S. Postal Service, not the city. As a result, zip codes don't always match municipal boundaries since they're organized around mail routes and delivery points rather than geographic factors. Second, the services you get will change. You'll now have city police and fire protection instead of county services. The city will pick up your trash, and depending on where you live, you might get city water and sewer services too. Your property taxes typically go up because you're paying city rates, but that money pays for these services. Third, the rules that govern your property change completely. The city's zoning laws and building codes now apply to you, so that shed you wanted to build might require a city permit now. Running a business from home, the city's commercial regulations now apply, and things that were perfectly fine in unincorporated areas might require new licenses or might not be allowed at all under city code. But how does annexation even happen in Alabama? According to state law, there are a couple of ways. One way is if all the property owners in an area sign a petition asking to be annexed. Another way is through a special election where people vote on it. But regardless of the method, there are strict rules the city must follow. The land being annexed has to touch the current city limits. It can't be a random piece of land miles away, and it also can't already be part of another city or within their jurisdiction. The bottom line is annexation means more services, more regulations, and typically higher taxes. But it also means a voice in your city's future.
And if you have something you want us to verify, text us at 256-382-2692.
Fox 54 Plus has your news, sports, and weather, Start your evening with Fox 54 at 5:30, delivering the latest headlines and live reports straight from the scene. Then, stay informed with Fox 54 News at 9, featuring your Tennessee Valley certified most accurate weather impact team, tracking everything from tornado threats to traffic delays during severe weather. Fox 54 Sports Extra brings you more of what sports fans crave, with deeper insights, expert analysis, and all the action that matters most. On Fox 54 Plus, you'll also find Alabama politics, plus 24/7 weather radar and real-time forecasts to keep you ahead of the storm. Looking for a quick recap? Don't miss Fox 54 Week in Review, highlighting the biggest stories of the week. Jumpstart your morning with Morning Rush, fast-paced news updates featured with uplifting stories from across the globe. Get your entertainment fix with Getting Real, where we break down movie reviews, top 10 lists, and spotlight the newest film. Die Hard fan? Locked On Sports dives deep into the Crimson Tide, the Tigers, college rivalries, and pro action. True Crime Warrior Style? Killer Cases brings you gripping real-life stories that stick with you. Hungry for more? Cooking with Style serves up mouth-watering recipes that are easy to make and impossible to resist. From movie previews before you head to the theater with Take a Look, to must-know headlines from across the region and around the world with In the News. Watch all of these shows on demand and also on the Fox 54 News app, available on Android and iOS devices, streaming 24/7.